In Matthew chapter 2, the Bible talks about certain wise men that came from the east to see the baby Jesus. And as I read the chapter today, I was wondering, are these men really wise? Or is the apostle just trying to be diplomatic by calling them wise men? Now, this is why I said that. They were in the east, whichever country they were, and they saw a star. And they were able to follow the star all the way to Jerusalem. But then they get to Jerusalem, and all of a sudden, they began to ask people for where the king was. You will think that maybe the star disappeared, but I dare to say that when they got to Jerusalem, they took their eyes off the star and began looking around and seeking counsel. And this is why I said that. Immediately, King Herod told them to go to Bethlehem. When they stepped out, the star appeared to them again, and they were able to follow that same star to the very manger where the child was born. If the star was able to show them the very house where the child was born, how is it that they lost their way in Jerusalem? I think what happened is that they got to Jerusalem and they took their eyes off the star and began seeking for the counsel of men. Now, what point am I trying to say from this story? I would like to talk about another thing that happened in 1 Kings chapter 13. A certain prophet was sent to Bethel, and God told him, when you get to Bethel, prophesy and go, don't eat. And on his way back, another prophet came to him and said, look, the Lord appeared to me and said, come to my house and eat. And the man went ahead, ate in his house. I think he spent like 3 days. And on his way back, a lion attacked him and killed him. And I see the death of that prophet like the death of Prince Oberyn in Game of Thrones. Totally avoidable deaths. Why? The Lord gave you a specific instruction. When you get there, prophesy and leave, don't eat. Now, what is the similarity between these two people? The prophet started his journey by listening to God and all of a sudden started listening to men. Just like the wise men started their journey by looking at the star and came to Jerusalem and began to look for advice of men. They started their journey looking at one thing and got to a certain point and started looking at something else. The prophet started his journey by listening to God and ended his journey by listening to men. The wise men started their journey by following the star, got to Jerusalem, started following men. I will give you a more contemporary example that is relevant to our context. There is a certain Nigerian musician who I met in person, and the first day I met him and I heard him rap, I knew this was the next big thing. Now, a major artist in Nigeria heard the guy rap and signed him on the spot on his record label. Now, when he got signed on the label, he abandoned rapping and said he wants to start singing. I remember when I noticed that the guy had stopped rapping, I told one of my friends, I said, look, this guy was signed onto this record label because of his rapping prowess. How does he want to remain relevant in this record label? By becoming a singer. That looks like what the wise men did, right? They started by following the star, got to Jerusalem, stopped following the star. Now, how does that apply to our personal life? Some of us started our ministries, started our businesses, started our career on a certain path, but then reached a certain level and began to deviate. Some of us came to where we are right now on the wings of prayer and the word. But then to carry us further, we have decided to start looking at something else. We are now all focused on SWOT analysis. SWOT analysis is even outdated now. We are now on the SAW analysis. No, my brother, if prayers brought you here, prayers can take you further. If God brought you here, God can take you further. God helped us establish our businesses and we grew to a certain level following Him. But now you feel like you have to now begin to bribe one or two people before you can take it further. Some of us, God gave us jobs and careers, and we are able to enter into the system on the wings of prayer and the word. But then now you have to do some office politics and maybe sleep with the boss for you to get the promotion that will take you further. God gave some of us spouses, but now we feel like we need to do one or two things, higher matter or whatever it is they call now to keep it, there are so many slave queens out there, so they don't take your husbands, begin to go to one or two places to get some things to help you take you further. No, don't make the same mistake the wise men did. If the star brought you here, the star is more than capable of taking you there. If God brought you here, God is much more than capable of taking you further. You don't need to sustain Him. You don't need to help Him. Now, let me balance this. I'm not trying to say you should ignore counsel or don't try to improve what you're doing. All I'm saying is if certain principles brought you here, if following God brought you here, following God can take you further. You don't need to compromise your faith. You don't need to compromise your standard. You don't need to change who you are. You don't need to change yourself. Now, does that mean you cannot improve? Of course not. That's not what I'm saying. In Exodus chapter 18, Moses had to listen to the counsel of his father-in-law to be able to be a more efficient person. That is the first action point for today, right? Keep your eyes on the star. Keep your eyes on God. Keep your eyes on the vision that He gave you that brought you to where you are. Don't change it for anything, except, of course, when He asks you to. Now, what's the worst part of it? The actions of the wise men actually came with consequences, even though it didn't come to them. They went about asking, where is the king that was born? The news got to Herod. Baba got jealous. And the action of the wise men led to the killing of so many children. Now, the killing of those children, of course, had been prophesied by Jeremiah in the book of Lamentations. But then uh, there's a question I really want to ask, and I would really love you to try and answer. Does prophecy inspire behavior, or does behavior propel prophecy? This is what I mean. When a prophecy is made, right, does it make people behave in a certain way so the prophecy will come to pass? Or do the way people behave make a prophecy come to pass? For example, a prophecy came to King Ahab that his home will be destroyed. Now, King Ahab repented and cried to God and blah, 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 blah. And God said, this curse has been postponed to the next generation. Doesn't that mean that the way he behaved delayed the fulfillment of the prophecy? Now, during the reign of King Solomon, Solomon messed up, right? And God prophesied that the kingdom would be divided. And his son came on stage, and there was a problem. And he had counsel from the older men, and then the younger men also gave him counsel. But he decided to follow the counsel of his peers, and that led to the separation of the kingdom. Now, what if he had followed the counsel of the elders? The kingdom would not have been divided, obviously. So it looks like his behavior propelled the fulfillment of the prophecy. What am I trying to say? I don't really know what the answer is, but it looks like behavior and prophecy, they go hand in hand. Like if a prophecy is made, whether good or bad, the way you behave will determine whether or not the prophecy will come to pass now or at a future date. The word of God is sure, it can never change, right? So when something is prophesied, it's possible that a prophecy will be prophesied to a certain person, and the prophet will tell him, you know what, you're going to rise and you're going to be king and you're going to be that. If the person keeps sleeping all day, he will never rise, he will never be king, he will never be whatever they told him he was going to be. And what that means is that the prophecy is hanging around his family. Maybe if he has a son or a grandson that behaves in a certain kind of way, the prophecy can come to fulfillment in his own life. Because behavior and prophecy, I think they go hand in hand. But I would love to hear what you think. Does prophecy inspire behavior, or does behavior foster the fulfillment of prophecy? Also, remember Esau, when Jacob was prophesying to him that you're going to serve your younger brother and all that, he said something very, very important. I think a lot of people missed it. He said, but then when you become restless, you will break his yoke from off your neck. What that suggests is that no matter how strong a curse or a prophecy is, it needs you to behave in a certain kind of way for it to come to fulfillment in your life. So what are the action points for today? Number one, keep your eyes on the star. If God brought you this far, He definitely has the capacity to take you further. Secondly, behave in such a way that good prophecies will come to pass in your life, and you can avert any cause by the way you behave. Thank you so much for joining Proverbs. No, thank you so much for joining March with Jesus today. And this is the second day of the challenge, and tomorrow we'll be reading Matthew chapter 3. Thank you so much for joining. Drop your comment. I would like to hear what you think. Make sure you invite your friends to come and join us. That's all from me today. Bye.